Thank you, Victor. Our next discussion is going to focus on the navigation, a bit of what Victor was talking about in his first point about the energy sector and also work transitions. It's our pleasure to welcome to the stage Dawn Farrell, who's the president and CEO of Transalta Corporation. She is a fantastic public policy leader, a leader in her community, and a great friend to the Public Policy Forum. And she will have a discussion with our president, Ed Greenspon.
First water, then there we go. Hi everyone again. Hi Dawn, thank you for joining us. So I'm not going to, I think Julie did a bit of an introduction, and there's, if you want deep biographies, they're available online. We're just going to get into this. Victor used the term the resilience pillar, so I guess I think you've been on the resilience pillar. Maybe you've invented the resilience pillar at Transalta. We talk a lot about disruption. You've had disruption, technology, climate, probably the two great drivers of disruption in our age. An oil price collapse on top of that. All sorts of things, regulation around climate change, et cetera, and a rebound, an interesting rebound. So I think you're the, I hate to use the term, I think you're the proverbial canary in the coal mine for a lot of companies that you're probably a few years ahead of what they're going through. What have you learned along the way? What lessons do you take away that will be applicable to others who are going through similar kinds of disruptions?
Well, I think we invented the term resilience at Transalta. So I guess what we've learned is that you can never lay down in the ditch. So you can never take any time to complain about where you are. You can't lay down in the ditch. You always have to have hope, and you have to ask a lot of people for help. And so when it comes to public policy, I think the central core theme of the public policy work we do at Transalta is we ask people for help. We go in and we say, here's where we're at, here's where we're trying to go, this is what we need from you. And we're very, very specific about it. We don't generalize, we don't pontificate, we don't get on a podium, we just say we need A, B, C, D. And if you give us A, B, C, D, we can do E, F, G, H, and then we can take the company to the other side.
And can everybody hear okay? Good? Volume good? Good. Well, let's go a bit deeper into the coal part of the business. In 2015, you're basically told to get out of coal. That's the mainstay of generation in Alberta. So just start with, how many coal workers did you have in 2015? How many coal workers do you have today?
We would have had about 1,500 people in our coal sector. We have about 600 today. By the time we're finished our transition, we'll have about 200. And that'll be by the end of 2022. Okay,
and what's happening to these people? What kind of conversations have you as a company had with them? And what kinds of measures have you and the government put in place?
Yeah, so let me just really put into context for people what happened in 2015. So in 2015, Alberta introduced the Climate Leadership Plan. And in that plan, it had three elements: off coal by 2030, carbon tax of $30, and we're bringing 5,000 megawatts of renewables into the market. The company, we traded around $12 a share. We were going along gangbusters. We were adding a lot of renewables investments. And within 9 months of that announcement, when the policy came out in November, by January, we were trading at $3.60. Our bonds were trading out by 700 basis points. We were, a lot of people who would normally call on us stopped calling on us. You find out who your friends are when you're in a crisis like that. And we were taken for dead. And that's where we were. So, and we had a whole workforce of fantastically hardworking, amazing people who had worked in our coal plants since the early 50s. Hardworking folks, great families, great contributors to the community. We were the tax base for the community out there, and we were just standing there with that mess on our hands. I can remember in somewhere in there, somebody invited me to meet the Prime Minister in New York because I was a woman. So my first response was, he was just in Calgary yesterday, he met with all the male CEOs, no, I won't go. My chairman, who is was the ambassador to Canada, phoned me and he said, yeah, get over it, you're going, right? But it was an informative meeting because in that meeting, I said to Prime Minister Trudeau, the number one, I think, and this is asking for help, I said, the number one thing I need from you is help not making my workers in my coal plants terrible, horrible people because they have provided a service in Alberta since the 1950s. I need you to help us transition. And I need you to honor those people and the work that they did through the transition. And do not slag our workers. They're honorable people who do honorable work, and they're all working in the coal plants today. Coal is still in Alberta. And he came around after the meeting and he said, I promise you I will help you. So that started our relationship with the federal government. We did the same thing with the provincial government. We worked with them to get an off-coal agreement. And this is a long way of saying, had we not got the ability to get the company back on its feet financially, there would have been nothing we could have done for our workers, not a thing. So in the end, we never actually, we've actually grown the free cash flow of the company. The bonds traded back in, the stock traded back up. We had to cut the dividend, we reduced debt, we did our part. But with our workforce, we really had to work with them to show them that they were transitioning because we decided to convert all of our coal plants to gas, and we're just starting that transition now. So people have had to work with us in our coal operations, keep them operating, at the same time that they are desperately fearful every single day that they're going to wake up and I'm going to shut the plant down or they're going to lose their jobs. Very, very difficult for an average family who relies on that salary, where that salary is paying for kids to go to hockey, right? Because that's what we do in Alberta. In the end, we asked for a lot of help from the provincial government. So one of the things that we found was there are no programs in this country for people who are still working. You get to get laid off, be worried, have 6 heart attacks, and then you get to go to the government and get a program.
I want to talk about this. I want you to go into a little bit more detail on this because, you know, it sounds like the programs exist for a binary type of world where you're in work or you're out of work, and or you're, you know, in training or you're out of training. Right. But that's not the way the world is. And the programs, so they needed you actually to make sure you disemployed the people before they could work.
When we started to work with transitioning our team out of the coal plants, and we knew it would take a long time, they had to get laid off, and then they could go on UIC, and then they could do retraining. Well, and think about ourselves, right? I was actually thinking about this morning. You know, when was the last time I re-educated myself? You know, I re-educate myself every day on the job, but, you know, when was the last time I did formal training? Well, look at the average person working in a coal plant. They started when they were 18 or 19. They've been working for 30 years. They've done a bit of upgrading, but now they're looking at the world and saying, I'm going to be working in a gas plant, or I might want to work in a wind farm. I might want to move to the hydro. So there were not programs that would help them. So we worked with the provincial government. And again, we asked them, we just said, we need help. Our people need to be upgrading. Some of them need to get their GED. We brought in Keano College to train people how to drive heavy vehicles. We work with Nate and Sate we decided that our workers would do better if they had a couple of trades. So instead of just being a maintenance guy or an operator, we're creating a program where they can have maintenance operations and instrumentation. So we're working on that program with people so that they can actually get better skills while they're working for us. We did a big transformation program where we effectively taught 2,000 people project management skills, and they all had initiatives that they worked on. And I phone 5 or 6 people a week at Transalta, how's it going? And I can remember this one call, this guy I know he was out at the mine, and he said, look, I know I'm going to lose my job. I know this mine is shutting down, but you have given me such great skills that I can leave Transalta the day that you don't need me anymore, and I know I can get a job because of this program that you've put in place. So, you know, making sure that people on the job are getting new skills, are able to get skills, and then working with government to bring those skills to them was a big important piece.
So are you or the government tracking these people, and do you know what is actually really happening with them?
No.
No.
We have no time for that. If somebody else would have to do that. The way I track people mentally is, did they leave TransAlta, and have I heard that they're working again? And, but no, there's no formal tracking.
Well, maybe that raises a question about the relative responsibilities of the different players in the system. So, you know, the employer, the individual, their union, the educational system, the government, all of those are players. Who has what responsibility? How much should the employer have?
You know, I think the reason that we work is so, you know, I think that we work to create goods and services so that we can create a great lifestyle for ourselves. I think that we govern so that our people can have a great lifestyle. I think that we have NGOs so that our people can feel that they've got, you know, the right environment that they live in, the right social structure that they live in. It's all for the people. So for me, I have an accountability to the people of TransAlta that they are as educated and as trained as possible for the jobs that they're in so that our company can flourish. Because if they're not educated and trained, our company doesn't flourish. We depend a lot on our government in Canada. We have socialized education. I think it's their accountability to make sure that that education is available for us to help ensure that we can continue to train our workers. And I think there's, so I think it's a shared accountability, but we do this all so that people can flourish in this country. And I think what we found is by simply saying this policy doesn't work, we need that policy, it's for the people. It's for the people of Alberta. They pay the taxes to be able to get this kind of training. And that worked out really well for us.
This is a bit different in Canada than in some other countries because there is this feeling that this is a socialized thing, that training should be done by governments, that there'll be leakage of the money you spend out there. But, you know, when you look at the figures, Canada's employers on training, it's about 1/7 the top countries, the Scandinavian countries, let's say, and only half of the OECD average. So I just wonder, you know, particularly, you know, we heard about labor shortages. So I imagine in certain parts of your business, you're also facing labor shortages. Are you going, nope, no labor shortages, because you're in Alberta?
I don't know, I just don't buy that. I've never had problems getting people. So I don't, we're involved personally in the immigrant community. There's tremendous talent in this country. I think there's a lot of underemployed people who have trouble finding their way into jobs because there's stickiness between the skills that people have and how people hire, and there's bias in how people hire, but I don't buy that there's...
So you feel less pressure to train as well?
No, we train a lot. We train a lot. All I'm saying is there's also training dollars available and training programs available from government. We should be utilizing those, and we do.
All right. In 2016, you said, we could have never foreseen that the carbon debate would become so big that coal would be shut down.
Right.
So as you look around at other companies in the energy sector, outside the energy sector, are they putting themselves at risk of being stuck with stranded assets? Are they putting themselves at risk of being surprised?
I mean, I do a lot of work on technology, and you know, we look at electric cars, electrification, automation. I would say that everything that I've seen, there's still a real need. There's still a real need for fossil fuels, for transportation, for airplanes, for quite a long time. But I would build into my plans end dates. You know, I would be very, if we had, for example, said to ourselves, the end of coal will be 2030, and we should build a scenario around that, we probably wouldn't have invested in Keep Hills. that would have been a significantly better outcome for the company had we not done that. We just finished building a coal plant that the public supported. We got permits we built. It cost us, our share of it was $900 million. Having to figure out what to do about a $900 million hole 4 years after you've built a plant is a pretty big order. So I would build that into my plans, but I would also work very carefully with government because I think government should not have done that to us. I think it was fine to end coal by 2030, but I think they should have made an exception for our brand new coal plant, which was highly efficient, had just been built, had the trust of the, we trusted the government and the people when they gave us our permits to build that plant. They should have given us at least 30 or 40 years for that plant. They approved it. So I do think that there has to be some conversations about if you're going to end something, you have to give adequate time. So for example, I've asked the governments in Alberta, both of them, I need to move to gas. I can make investments that will last 30 years that are very efficient, or I can make investments that will last 15 years that are less efficient, but are only 15 years and very low capital. If the government would create a policy that says you can invest in gas-fired generation and you can have till 2060, then I'm good to go. But if they keep hanging out that, ooh, gas might be bad, we're not really sure if gas is clean, I can't make those longer-term investments, and those are very efficient investments, and they're better for the environment.
Well, governments change, and indeed, it's possible it could happen even in Alberta. So,
You're sure about that, are you?
if there is a change in government, the leader of the opposition has come out against a carbon tax, for instance. What would that mean for Transalta?
It means absolutely nothing. So the leader of the opposition is also he's continuing to have a large emitters tax, which effectively we had in Alberta before the NDP came. He'll slightly change the incentive from, we think it's going to go from $30 to $20. It's still, for us, we have to get out of coal. We have to move to natural gas. It's a really important move for our company. Many of you who are in the financial sector know that most investors now look at what's called environmental, social, and governance indices. You have to show improvements in your carbon. So we'll be moving to gas no matter what the government is.
So the theme of the conference today is competitiveness. You operate, you're known for Alberta, but you operate in the United States, you operate in Western Australia. In what way are they different in their competitiveness, and how does Canada stand compared to the other jurisdictions you're in?
Well, Canadians are really slow. Canadians like to talk, they like to have meetings, they like to talk some more, they like to think about the policy, they take years to do what other people do in months. So Canada is a very frustrating place for a person like me, because I'm just like, seriously, can we just not get this done? And why does it have to take a year or two to do it? Australia is unbelievable how fast they move. Like, you know, we can get a pipeline permitted and built in 16 months in Australia. Governments there, and I know what it is. Australia feels the heat of China. They know they are going to be killed by China, and so they are innovative, they are fast, and they take care of their environment, they take care of their people. They have the same kind of, I mean, Australians are just Canadians that have a nicer place to live, so right? It's hotter.
Vancouver's closer to China than Sydney, so why don't we feel like we're going to get killed?
I find Vancouver a very, very vibrant city, very innovative. Lots is going on in Vancouver. I think Vancouver does feel the heat. I see a lot of things going on there. I just think when it's in the energy business here, for some reason I think we have in Canada, we can actually let a whole era go by. So if you look at natural gas and LNG, why did we miss that era? Those LNG facilities should be built. They should be shipping LNG to China, and that should have been done. So I just think Canadians I think we're very comfortable here. I think we think that it's all going to be good forever. We're like a rich family where it's like, yeah, we've been rich for decades. Don't worry about that. It's all going to be fine.
Okay, well, so you were forced to be uncomfortable. And just tell us a little bit about the transition of the company then. You've just announced some new wind projects. What does Transalta look like coming out of this? You're not out of it yet, but you're a long way down the transition.
Yeah, I would say the company's 108 years old. So it's been through many transitions. It's transitioned from hydro to coal to natural gas to wind. We've always been able to keep up with the time. So we've been a pretty innovative company. I think now, though, the company is fiercely competitive and fiercely determined. We had a near-death experience. We are not going to die. We had to recover ourselves and put ourselves back on the track to keep going. So you find the people that are there are pretty resilient. When stuff's happening, we're like, yeah, whatever. You haven't seen what we faced. That's no big deal. So I think we're pretty focused, pretty competitive, and I'm really proud of the work we've done actually on this public policy side. Because I learned when I worked at BC Hydro that, you're going to laugh at this, coming from Alberta to BC, I learned there actually was public policy because Alberta never did any, right? So when I got to BC and I realized there is such a thing as a government, and it was over in Victoria, and I was working for a Crown corporation, which meant that I actually had to participate with the deputy ministers over there. It was actually quite a surprise to me at how much work you could get done when you actually worked with people in government, and they were just a great group of people, and we could do these really interesting things. So when I came back to Alberta, we still had a different government then that wasn't as deep in public policy. I have to say the NDP government has been terrific to work with. They worked really, even though they flattened the company effectively with the coal policy, at the end of the day, they worked side by side with us to make sure the company stayed in business, stayed strong, and that our people got to the other side. So I now see the work that we do in public policy, both federally and provincially, as an important component of how we run our company.
Mm-hmm. I guess as I think about it, in some ways, as policy imposed certain decisions on you, but the marketplace perhaps made these a bit easier by technology, by wind prices dropping, by solar prices dropping.
That's right.
And by, I think people don't think about gas and technology, but the, tremendous surpluses of gas in North America. Without that, I guess this would have been...
really difficult.
Yeah, not just a 260 bottom of your stock, but...
No, actually Alberta wouldn't have made it, so they couldn't have done the policy. In a way, there's no way to run Alberta without big generators. There's even wind and solar, there's just, Alberta's a big industrial place. So I guess we would have had to go to nuclear or something, which Albertans wouldn't want to do.
Okay, so now your company's at, stock is at the highest level since summer 2015. You have a big smile.
We're back.
I think if I saw the insider trading reports, you just purchased some yourself.
They gave me 1 day. They said, you can buy on Thursday, and then you're going to be, you're going to have too much information, you won't be able to buy again.
So you went shopping on Thursday.
Yeah, and of course the price was over $10, and I had to pay that, and I was really PO'd about that. But anyway.
So now that things are going well, you have activist investors who you have this deal with Brookfield. Maybe you want to just very briefly explain that deal and why people, why some of your investors, some of your activist investors in the United States are unhappy with it.
Yeah, so activist investors are going to be a big feature in the Canadian economy. So unfortunately, if Canadians don't support their businesses and buy equities in them and support them, they languish. You look at the banks right now, I mean, they're down quite a bit. So what happens is when Canadians don't get behind their companies, activist investors look over and go, wow, there's a nice stock. trading at $7, has $360 million of free cash flow, 20% cash on cash return. I'm getting that company. That's what they do. So again, when we were coming into this part of the year, our transition, we were getting ready to try to do our coal to gas. We needed the money for that. I wanted to continue to grow Transalta Renewables. We were being constrained by that. We are trying to also get our balance sheet where we wanted it to. So we had been working with Brookfield for a couple of years, but we'd never found a transaction that would work. And we did. So we're really excited about that because we just are going to close $750 million. So Victor said earlier, you have to be able to access capital markets. Well, I can tell you there is a ton of money out there. It's global money. Brookfield's a big player in the global environment. They asset manage over $350 billion worth of assets. They have big pools of capital. So we went to them and said, look, we are ready now. Our balance sheet is in good shape.
You initiated this conversation.
We've had a conversation back and forth for a number of years. I happened to run into Sachin up at CIBC's conference in Whistler, the one where nobody wanted to go to because the mayor disinvited all the oil and gas people. But we ran into each other. We started talking about what we could do, and we had some common interests, and I really wanted a cornerstone shareholder with a reputation like Brookfield in the company to basically say to everybody, not only are we back, but we are now very credible. So come into the company. Didn't know if it would work, but the stock market loved it, so it was great.
Right. Are you going to have an annual general meeting as scheduled on April 26th?
We are going to have an annual general meeting on April 26th, and if you were a shareholder on March 7th, please show up and vote for us. I also learned doing public policy, I now know what it looks like to run a political campaign, which I've been doing for 3 weeks now.
Last question. Let me just go back to those coal workers in the last question. Are some of them, many of them, are positions available for them as you build up wind, as you build up other parts?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, people who work in the coal community live in that community. They have farms and they're really, really connected to the community. So they're not as mobile as other people are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's critically important to have these strong, solid communities in Canada where people choose to live, choose to work, choose to raise their kids, choose to have farms. So a lot of them want to stay close. We do have jobs for a couple of hundred people as we transition to gas. I'm really pleased with that. Some of them have gone to the hydro business, which is outside of Banff. But most of them we're trying to transition into other jobs.
Okay, well, we'll wish them luck. We wish you luck.
Thank you.
We'll hope the policy will do its job in both cases. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Ed. Looking at reimagining Canada's tech icon, it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage John Chen, who's the Executive Chairman and CEO of BlackBerry. Since his appointment in 2013, he's transformed the organization from a hardware icon to a software leader. A little bit more exciting than his role as BlackBerry, he's on the board of the Walt Disney Company, which is very fun. And he'll be interviewed by Tom Clark, who we all know is the former host of the West Block. He's the chair of Global Public Affairs. Welcome to John and to Tom.